Welcome to another episode of Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series and Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of over 50 top-shelf guests, ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and special thanks goes out to co-producers Chuck Granata, Dennis Dyken, and Mark Freed, without whom this series would not have happened. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. The next entry in the Chuck Granata Pet Sounds interview series is Chuck's chat with Don Randi, Brian Wilson's beloved Wrecking Crew pianist, as well as Nancy Sinatra's. Chances are, if you've fallen in love with the piano work in a song from the 1960s or the 1970s, it's Don. Good Vibrations, ABC, He's a Rebel, It's My Party, A Little Less Conversation, You've Lost That Lovin Feelin, Somethin Stupid, I Got You Babe, Different Drum. The list goes on and on. Don is simply nothing short of a national treasure. Here he is then, Don Randi.
Just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing and what I'm looking for, I'm doing a book on the making of pet sounds. And I really want to paint this from a creative and musical and technical perspective through the recollections and the analysis of the musicians, the writers, people like Tony Asher, and the engineers.
Now, this is about the Pet Sounds album.
I mean, we can talk about Brian and the Beach Boys and your work with them in general. And
then, I didn't really associate that much with them except for Brian.
Right.
You know, everybody else either wasn't there or they had nothing to do because it was all the studio guys.
Right.
But Brian was the contributor. He had ideas and he had to work them out. And a lot of times, because he was an intelligent guy, he'd work out, we might play something and that might trigger something. Or he might do something to us and that would trigger us. It worked both ways.
Right.
He was probably one of the most creative guys you could ever work for.
Well, who would you compare him to? I mean, obviously Phil, right?
Well, I think Phil is for me, because of Phil going in different directions too a lot of times. Yeah, Phil and Brian were geniuses of the time.
I mean, I know that Brian was heavily influenced by what Phil was doing. Do you feel that Brian very conscientiously tried to copy?
Never. I don't think Brian was anything like Phil. I think it was apples and pears. The only thing they had in similarity was the dexterity of getting from the beginning to the end. Non-stop sometimes. Sometimes they had to stop because we were all too tired. But Brian's ideas a lot of times came in, let's see, how can I say that? Brian would piece together things, whereas Phil saw an overall thing. You obviously knew that right from the beginning. Brian may have seen the overall picture, and I'm sure he did, but he had to do it in stages. He'd do sections of songs at times. That's the way Phil liked to do it. Rehearse it, and then record it. But he wouldn't record it till he was very satisfied with what the product was. Whereas Brian sometimes could go in there and be very happy with getting a section of the song because he knew where it was going. We as musicians may not have known where it was going. You might have had an idea, and sometimes you didn't. He just took it in another direction that just blew your mind because he was that kind of talent.
As a musician, as someone that was there at the creation, what are the challenges of doing it both of those ways, of doing all those really intense rehearsals and then recording it all at once and then just doing the individual sections?
Well, it's challenging both ways. I mean, there is really no difference. The only thing better for me was knowing that when you ran through the song for Phil, you ran through the whole song. When you ran through the stuff with Brian, you never heard the song. You only heard sections of it. And then when you finally heard it pieced together, you would say, oh my goodness gracious, He knew where it was going most of the time, but you didn't. You see, Phil was the song. He'd write or get a song that he knew was a hit. he had that outstanding, wit about him and brilliance to be able to know a great song, which is also part of being a great producer.
Right.
Whereas Brian was producing his own stuff, his own material, and he actually, I think, sometimes was writing it as we were doing it.
Were your parts written out for you?
No.
They weren't?
No. Sometimes, you had a chord sheet to go by. Most of the times. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if you want to, this has nothing to do with Brian, but I went to do, years and years later, there's a great arranger, Don Randi.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't even talk about him, but he did a lot of TV shows, like he would do Laverne and Shirley. And he was, we knew him from Gold Star. He was a hell of a piano player also. But I go in and I get a call to do a Laverne and Shirley, and I think Ray Pullman was on it, and myself, I forget who else, but it was a pretty good-sized orchestra, because they were doing a whole series of cues. And I get the cue, and I'll just give it a number. It may not be an accurate number, but it was like 11M, 11 or 11 LNS. You don't know what it is.
Right.
And I sit down, and this sheet, goes on and on for like 8 pages, and it's black with notes and chords. And I'm looking at it, and I said, my God, can I read this? And I start, I said, wonder what he wants. And the guy who did that one thing must have made more money than everybody in the orchestra, because he notated, like there was 3 or 4 of us that played on Phil's records, and he wrote every note out of what you call straight A's, da-ga-da, 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 over and over and over again, for bars and bars and bars. Instead of writing a number, he would write a number with the chords.
Wow.
I looked at it, I said, and Ray Pullman happened, he came over, so I said, ask him what song this is, and it happened to be My Baby.
Oh, my God.
But, that's what it was. But you didn't know, because they would do sound-alikes for Laverne and Shirley.
Right.
Or they just do a piece of a song,
You know what, give me a little bit about your musical background and your training. And
Well, I went to Los Angeles Conservatory of Music, City College, SC. I was thrown out of the best places. And I went to work. I had to go to work. And I was a jazz pianist. When I met Phil, I was already playing jazz. And I don't know how it happened, but we ran into each other. And the next thing I knew, we did a date at Gold Star. And it was the first time I met Hal Blaine.
Do you remember what that track was?
All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 4 weekly episodes. That's Friday's free episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound episode, which showcases Patreon members and the Elephant Six world, your Monday bonus episode, and your Wednesday early release ad-free super extended director's cut of that Friday's show. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/discograffiti.